What's up, Chiefs Kingdom? Noah Gray here, tight end for the Kansas City Chiefs. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe to Josh's channel and check out showmefootball.com for more.
What is up, Chiefs Kingdom? Welcome back to another video on my channel. My name is Josh Fan of showmefootball.com and arrowheadaddict.com, and we got some Chiefs news to talk about today. And first of all, it's glad to be back because I know I've been slow with the Chiefs content lately. NFL Draft Combine weekend just passed, so I know that the draft talk is going to start ramping up soon. Free agency, the legal tampering period is a week from today, and I've barely made any videos yet about possibilities in free agency. But I decided to start today with the news that we learned, which is, well, there's a few things that we're going to talk about, but I want to start with the biggest one, at least in my opinion, the biggest one, and that is the Kansas City Chiefs are deciding not to use the franchise tag on Orlando Brown. So this is a little bit surprising to me. And from people that I've heard from, because I've actually heard from some people on this, the Chiefs not using the tag on Orlando Brown was pretty surprising, which makes me believe that something happened, because Ian Rappaport had tweeted earlier in the day, maybe it wasn't Ian Rappaport, it was somebody though, tweeted earlier today before the news that the Chiefs were meeting with Orlando Brown's team. And also things probably developed over Combine weekend, I'm sure, because even though the Combine is important for draft prospects, it's also an opportunity for agents and teams to meet up, discuss things, potential contracts. And it's very possible the Chiefs talked to Orlando Brown's team there, and they talked to other teams about their interest in Orlando Brown and a lot of other things. But anyway, it sounded like the Chiefs were going to use the tag on Orlando Brown. Then the news came out today, nope, they're not going to use the tag. And here's what I think happened. I firmly believe that the Kansas City Chiefs decided not to use the tag on Orlando Brown because they want to get a head start in free agency. The Chiefs have big plans for free agency. And if they were to tag Orlando Brown, they are slated to pay him $20 million on the tag. And that hinders a lot of what they can do in free agency. Because if Brown is on the tag and they can't come to a long-term deal before the legal tampering period, they're not going to be able to offer free agents a lot of money. And I don't think either side is very confident that they can reach a long-term deal, at least not at this point. But it doesn't mean that the Chiefs can't still come to a long-term agreement with Orlando Brown. That is not out of the question. But now it makes it more realistic that Orlando Brown could walk and go to another team and hit the free agent market. We've seen before teams with impending free agents end up coming to an agreement right before free agency opens. I could see that happening with Orlando Brown. The Chiefs do something. But you know what? I'm just going to say, I don't think it happens. Even James Palmer was on 610 Sports Radio after the news today and said that he thinks it's a 0% chance that the Chiefs and Orlando Brown come to a long-term agreement. And I think this is just Brett Veach evolving as a general manager like he has over the past couple seasons. And he's finally drawing a line in the sand and he's saying, look, I am not paying a good player great money. And I think a lot of us feel like that's what the Chiefs would be doing by giving Orlando Brown the franchise tag or giving him a big long-term deal like they were going to last offseason. I also think that the Chiefs know what Orlando Brown is worth on the open market, and he's not going to get what he thinks he's going to get. He's going to facepalm himself because he's not going to get the deal that he thinks he's going to. I'm not saying he won't get paid at all, but I think what he wants from the Chiefs, he will probably not get from anyone else either. And that's why there's still a possibility that the Chiefs could come to a long-term agreement with Orlando Brown. Maybe he sees what's out there and goes, okay, yeah, sorry, I misjudged the market. Let's work some things out. But I think the Chiefs are completely comfortable letting Orlando Brown go and rolling with the NFL draft and trading up. I mean, there's a lot of good tackle prospects in this draft. Now that we've seen the Combine come and go, and I've done a little bit of homework, I mean, this is a deep tackle class. Aiden Harrison, Jalen Duncan, I mean, there's some guys out there. Now, I'm not sure how many guys can step in and play left tackle from day one, but the Chiefs have a lot of assets and they can trade up. And I think there are tackle prospects in this draft that the Chiefs could trade up for that could come in and play left tackle from day one. And that was always my issue with moving on from Orlando Brown and people wanting to replace him. I said, who are you going to replace him with? Because the free agent left tackle market isn't good. The draft has some good prospects, but I was always afraid that the Chiefs' draft position wasn't good enough for them to grab a left tackle. They can trade up, though. And if they trade up, that sounds good to me. I just wonder how much it'll take. But obviously, that's pretty far out from now. But those are my general thoughts coming off of this news that the Orlando Brown deal doesn't look like it's going to happen, and the Chiefs aren't using the franchise tag on Orlando Brown. The Chiefs want to do things in free agency. If this was just about the Chiefs bringing back their own in-house free agents, the Chiefs would have tagged Orlando Brown and things would have been fine. They would have brought back Frank Clark, who we're about to talk about in a minute, and they would have brought back Juju Smith-Schuster, and the Chiefs just would have ran it back. The Chiefs have learned from the last time they ran it back after the 2019 Super Bowl. They're not trying to run it back. They're trying to get better. They have big plans in free agency. I don't know what those plans are right now, but I have enough info to tell you guys that I think the Chiefs are going to be making some moves. And I don't necessarily mean like a huge splash for like a superstar, but I mean a lot of moves that you look at and you go, wow, well, that's a nice move for Kansas City. Like the Justin Reed signing last year. I think we could see 2, 3, maybe 4 Justin Reed type signings for the Chiefs from outside of the organization. And I think the Chiefs they want to get a head start on free agency. They're trying to get this Orlando Brown thing out of the way, whether that's a long-term deal or letting him walk, but they're not using the franchise tag. They have no interest. And Frank Clark, let's just move on to Frank Clark. I think a Chris Jones extension will come too, and a Mahomes restructure. Those are a couple other things that I think will happen that will allow them to have money to spend in free agency. But the Chiefs have even more money to spend in free agency because the news has come out that the Kansas City Chiefs are going to release Frank Clark. And this one was also a little bit surprising to me that it actually happened. Now, obviously, Frank Clark hasn't been officially released yet. But it sounds like from everyone that is in the know, Adam Schefter, Ian Rappaport, James Palmer, ESPN, Frank Clark will be released by the Kansas City Chiefs. And it really does seem like this is the end of Frank Clark in Kansas City, which, woo! Let's go, baby! I mean, you guys know how long I've been waiting to throw this party for releasing Frank Clark. But in all seriousness, Frank Clark, he put in his time here. He had his moments, but this was absolutely 100% the right move because Frank Clark, even though he had his playoff moments, sure, this goes back to Brett Veach, not paying good players great money. And Frank Clark was making great money here for being even a good player. I would struggle to even call him a good player. Like, he's been average in Kansas City. I mean, okay, postseason, that's a separate conversation. I don't want to go too deep into that. But Frank Clark was, for the most part, a disappointing player in Kansas City. And this was the right move. It was reported that the Chiefs tried to rework his deal. Frank Clark's camp wasn't willing to compromise enough, so the Chiefs said, you know what, see ya, we're going to release you. And that saves them $21 million. The Chiefs save a lot of money from this move. That combined with not giving Orlando Brown the franchise tag, that's $40 million right there to spend in free agency. I am telling you guys right now, the Chiefs have plans in free agency. They are trying to get better. They want to make upgrades. They are not trying to do this run it back thing again. And if that means letting go of guys like Orlando Brown and Frank Clark, so be it. Now, here's the thing with Frank Clark being released. I wouldn't completely rule out him potentially returning to Kansas City still, only because of his relationship with the organization and Andy Reid and how much this organization means to him and how much the Chiefs value him and his presence. But the fact of the matter is, even though the Chiefs save a lot of money from this move, cutting Frank Clark, they still are getting $7 million back in dead cap from cutting Frank Clark. So the move doesn't come without any cost. They still have that $7 million dead cap hit. And it's really hard to see the Chiefs then giving Frank Clark a new contract on top of the fact that they're also getting $7 million counted against their cap and dead cap because they just cut Frank Clark. So because of that, I think I can confidently say that this is probably the end of Frank Clark in Kansas City. And the truth is that Frank Clark, yes, he contributed here at critical moments, sure. You guys know how I feel about his playoff performance for the most part. He did have a decent postseason this past year. He did contribute in the playoffs for the Chiefs, but overall, I think his playoff performance is a tad bit overrated, and I do think that a replacement level defensive end can bring the type of performance that Frank Clark brings. Argue however much you want about the locker room factor and what Frank Clark brings in that department, whatever. But I do think that the Chiefs can upgrade from Frank Clark rather easily, and they can do it with someone that doesn't cost a lot. And I don't know if you guys have noticed, but the veteran pass rusher market is actually going to be filled with some quality guys that probably won't cost that much. Bud Dupree was just released by the Titans today. That would be a solid addition. Leonard Floyd of the Rams is getting released. That's another one to look at. Khalil Mack, it's rumored that he's probably going to be a cap casualty for the Chargers. I mean, I would be interested in that. And these are guys that probably aren't going to cost that much and probably are wanting to win a ring, win a championship, and they'd be willing to come to Kansas City to do so. And so that's why I think this is the end of Frank Clark, and that's why I also think it's the right move. So, and another thing, too, is that with Frank Clark officially hitting the open market, it sounds like, I definitely think there's probably other teams out there that are willing to pay him more. I think he will have a relatively strong market just because of the playoff experience and the attitude that he brings. Some other team will value that, and I just think it's all too likely that he moves on from the Chiefs and the Chiefs move on from him ultimately. So, yeah, guys, I mean, that's all I got. I just wanted to give my thoughts out on Frank Clark and Orlando Brown and the news that we heard about them today. You know, this is an exciting offseason. We're going to see a lot of shakeup, I think. We're seeing Brett Veach at the top of his game right now as far as roster management goes. I mean, he's coming off an A-plus draft last year. We just won our second Super Bowl in the last 5 years. Some of the past mistakes that I think Brett Veach has made, he's learned from, and he's not settling this year. And we're going to see some guys go that you guys maybe weren't expecting, and we're going to see a lot of new faces next year, and we're going to continue to stack talent and keep this roster going with fresh faces, and we're going to keep that hunger to win a Super Bowl next year. But with all that being said, I'll probably record another video either tonight or tomorrow going over all the Kansas City Chiefs in-house free agents, and I'll kind of do like a cut or keep type of video, just going down the list. And then I'm going to start releasing some videos about potential free agents that I like for the Chiefs. And then after that, it's going to be all draft stuff. But make sure you guys are tuned in for that. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe so more Chiefs fans can find this. Hit the notification bell. It really helps. And lastly, make sure you check out my work on showmefootball.com and arrowheadaddict.com, especially showmefootball.com if you guys are into the XFL at all. I'm covering the Battlehawks this year for XFL 2023, and I've always got fresh content coming out on arrowheadaddict.com. So appreciate y'all, and I'll see you all in the next one. Go Chiefs!